Hello and welcome to Mitten Backstage. I'm back in action after 2.5 months working with musical and focusing on 4 other projects, an album release, other shows, playing with multiple bands at an awards ceremony. It's been a busy last couple months. I appreciate your patience and understanding in it all, to those of you who might have been looking for something to listen to during the winter. But we're back doing stuff, me and Max on the ones and twos in the background, helping edit all this together. Always appreciating them and their time, and appreciate you for tuning in today, because I am happy to sit down with my friend Matt Finch once again. Now, people who've listened to this podcast will remember he is a returning guest. I figured with all the chat around AI and how it's affecting the visual art space, the musical art space, other aspects of our culture and living, and it's in the news a lot, I would go to Matt as a source for understanding AI, as he is someone who not only works with AI creatively, but professionally. So he understands how to code for it. He understands how to build different AIs for different tasks. He understands how to use it as a generative creative tool or as something complementary to his own artistic workflow. So to have him on is a great way to understand it all. And hopefully it dispels some misinfo you might have gotten. Maybe it skews your hopeful meter towards optimistic. But either way, this is a great conversation about AI, art. You know, we delve into other aspects of culture just because art and AI seem to be touching all of those right now. And it was a great conversation. If you want to support Mitten Backstage and other podcasts that I do, you can head on over to patreon.com/Dutcher Snedeker. You can subscribe at different tier levels to get access to different perks. You can also go to dutchersnedeker.com to see everything else that I'm currently up to around the internet. Things are being slowly updated to reflect my 2023 show dates with Earth Radio, Normal Mode, Mark Lavengood, The Music That Raised Us Tribute Experience, and other side ventures and solo opportunities too. A lot of things in the works going into the warmer months, and I'm excited to get to it. All right, I've introduced him plenty. So let's dive right into this fascinating conversation with Matt Finch. What is your date of birth? Why do you... Okay.
Social security numbers. If you did not ask me this before. All right, there we go.
Or like,
all right.
what was it, John Mulaney pointing out the phenomenon of like having to convince a robot that you're not a robot to get into stuff.
And now you have, yeah, exactly. The did you see that text though? That the response by so this person, like an AI was like trying to get past a captcha, whatever this how to pronounce that.
Right.
And yeah, the person was just like, how do I know you're not an AI? And the person and the AI responded, I'm blind. And the person went, oh, I'm sorry. And then like helped the AI.
I'm just a little baby. Oh, he's just a little baby.
We gotta help the little baby out.
Because like, well, all this chat around like AI, I was thinking about, you're in kind of that unique sweet spot of like you're working with AI and experimenting with it creatively, but then you're also working on it or like it's part of the business you work with.
Yeah. 100%.
So you're getting in real time, like, you're hearing both camps, like this is going to change everything, or this is a dystopic nightmare.
Absolutely. I mean, for part of the teams that I work with, yeah. So I do directly develop like different machine learning solutions. Now I didn't work on specifically like the ChatGPT model that a company came out with, but I helped a little bit with like some of the vocab stuff on it. But that's like was pretty tangential to like the actual work that went into it. But the type of ML I do is kind of funny, yeah, because there's a lot of like operators within our infrastructure that like jokingly are like, dude, like you're helping us, but I'm pretty sure you're the reason we're not going to have a job in a little bit, like, which is, but so you actually hear it in real time in the workplace as well. Cause there's a lot of, this is like the first time I think like the knowledge workers, quote unquote, have been threatened by something. Whereas automation in the past has been oh, we don't need to have this labor. We can, this robot can build the thing. But now it's like this robot can think through the process 10 times faster and is X amount more accurate. So but I actually don't, my personal beliefs on it is I think this is a huge hype bubble we're in.
Right.
And I think we are definitely changing the landscape of the economy, of what it means to open up a startup as like a software company, what it means to like own hardware, like all that's changing. But I don't think it's like this like meteorite towards like a certain class's existence. I just think that
Yeah.
it's about adapting. It's like, will you use the internet and buy things off it, or will you like wait 10 years and then feel comfortable buying things like with Amazon, right? Where like
Right.
I feel like we're in like the late 90s of AI, if you will, where we're like everyone's excited, thinks it's cool. We're trying to figure it out, but there's still a lot of people who don't trust it and think it's evil. And I think in like 5 or 6 years, it will just be like everyone has well, not everyone has an iPhone. It's a very first world thing for me to say, but like,
Right.
a lot of people have iPhones. I think a lot of people will be comfortable with AI down the road.
Yeah, because it's funny because like as much as there's been the people who are like this everything's gonna be ruined, and there's that art competition that had someone win with AI art, and there
Yep.
there's like other instances of AI being smarter than you think, but also there's plenty of examples of AI that have been like like Tesla's vehicles getting recalled because the
Yep.
self-driving AI hasn't been working, or like the even in like if you've been a steward of the internet you've seen like I think of those AI generated articles where
Mhm.
it'll come. One of my favorite ones that I think about is the headline was "The rumor come out: Does Bruno Mars is gay?" And then it
I
was
like
a
how
whole article.
it makes me wonder, is the rumor the question? Because the rumor has come out. You would think that it would say Bruno Mars is gay. Like that's the rumor. Like, right?
Yeah,
So,
and but does he? Does
yeah.
I?
What does he?
And then like the whole article had that same kind of cadence of like, I think you found words, you just don't know what to do with them.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, how familiar are you with how like kind of like the technical part of it like actually works?
My only understanding is like it's someone's programming it, but then there's also a process that you also I feel like through the programming you have to like establish something for the AI to work off of, or like some sort of
Okay.
vocabulary or systems or something. I don't know.
Yeah. It's all matrix math at the end of the day. But like essentially it's so cool because if you can just think like so in a document, like if you have like a paragraph, right?
Mm,
In a way, when you read a paragraph, now as a human, we have everything we've ever read up until that moment to help us make sense of what the paragraph means. But
mm,
essentially, if you just were to take a paragraph out of context, the only way you would know how what any word meant in the paragraph is in relation to every word in that paragraph. So basically what happens is everything that the AI learns, it learns how to put words into like a dimensional space. So a really simplified way would be like you could think of an X and Y coordinate, and a word would be like would have a location in
mm,
in that space, and then another word would that's similar to it or used often would also be in that space. So it's like there's these multidimensional coordinates for every word, or what they call tokens, because sometimes a token can be like a couple words together, like and this or something might be like kind of considered one token. And then what happens is as it's generating the text, it's generating a new vector which has all these probabilities, and as it moves through, the probabilities subtly point and change at different likelihoods, and the biggest likelihood will always be the next thing. And when you train it accurately and you do a pass through that matrix, it's basically like on a cycle. So it's like it'll be like get this phrase or this word, go through the matrix again, get the next word, go through the matrix again, get the next word. It just kind of
oh,
iterates and pumps itself out in that cycle, but it can do it so fast. And it's like pleasing when you see it like kind of write itself out on the screen that it makes you feel like someone's typing it or something. But yeah, that's all it is really. So when people's like try to like talk about it being crazy. I'm like, no, it's just like that they have like a lot of GPUs to hold the context of that matrix and can do the multiplication extremely fast. Whereas, on your computer, if you have a GPU for different graphics and stuff, you can process stuff super fast as well. It's just that, with 25,000 GPUs, you can just do it that much faster, if you will.
Right.
That's really all it is. So I think it's kind of it's like a little bit of a magic trick, and humans are like anthropomorphizing
Right.
their own thing. Plus, like, we grew up in a time where we got seeded at an early age in the 90s that like AI would be a thing, from like Terminator to like the internet coming to sci-fi like blowing up. So we're like doing all these we're doing this prophecy fulfilling stuff, like that's what I think is happening. I don't think we actually have this like sentient thing, but I am afraid that evil powers could use it to create mass misinformation. Like,
Yes.
that's my one worry about it.
Yeah, I'm like, it's this weird thing where, like, it seems like a lot of the talking is like about these grand, like these dystopic concepts of like how's it going to change the economy and working culture, and it's like, okay, but we've already had, like like stock trading is like hyper seconds of calculations with computers, or like, flight systems. I don't know, like there's AI that like helps coordinate and supplement, like, like with the speed of being able to go through stuff. It's easier, like, okay, you're researching something and that you have the means to run a simulation virtually, with some inputs. It's like it's been there in different forms, but I think everyone's thinking of it like, it's going to be Jarvis, like from Iron Man or something.
Exactly. I think it's because this is the first time the public en masse has had like an interface to it, right?
Right.
Like, and the other cool thing that like people maybe think about or don't think about is like, okay, so when they release Apple, I'm just make stuff up. When they release Apple iPhone 12, they've already got Apple 13 in the works and plans for Apple 14, right?
Right.
When they released 3.5, they already had GPT-4 at minimum being trained, if not just being tested and done and ready to be part of Bing. When they released ChatGPT-4, you can bet ChatGPT-5 is like being trained right now. So it's not like what we're seeing in the public is even the newest thing. It's like there's still that delay where the industry leaders are actually like doing it ahead, and the world's not blowing up. You know what I mean? So
yeah, because it's I think it's interesting as it relates to, like, I don't know, because it's hard to think about it as like this new thing entirely with all the times you've seen it elsewhere, but then there's still a lot of people who are, like you're saying, en masse, like discovering, oh, there's more of a use case than just like it's this supercomputer that Batman uses to catch criminals. It's like, no, you could use it, in, I don't know, the medical field. You could use it in, to find your favorite show. I don't know, like
absolutely.
Like you could, I feel like some people right now are trying to dress up. I don't know if it's necessarily the case, but I think of like how Bing tried to make it their search engine into an AI or something.
Yeah.
And I never used Bing, so I didn't know if it was like, oh, they're trying to make an anthropomorphized search engine, or is it like they're just saying it's an, like, oh, it's an AI, but it's actually like not as tuned as whatever algorithms help, process info. But that, I feel like those are related, like algorithms and AI. Is it just a difference of like algorithms just kind of happen once you hit go, and AI, it kind of evolves as it's being used or something? I'm trying to think of like a difference.
I think in AI is algorithms. I think they're the same. The difference is like how general is the algorithm. So if I want to find an average of something, I would say there's like, that's an algorithm, right? I'm taking these sequential steps. I'm processing. I'm computing something. Right? I'm taking. So if I have 5 terms I want to know the average. I can sum up all the terms and I can divide it out and I can get what would be equally bucketed into, however many terms that I have. And then we have an average. All right. That doesn't seem like sentient, but if you think about it, there is a level of artificial intelligence. Now, I'm being very liberal with the term here, but there's a sense of artificial intelligence because it's like a calculator in some sense is artificial intelligence because it's artificial, but it is intelligent. There is an
Yep.
intelligence to it. Like it's computing something. So now again, super, super liberal term. I think a lot of people would argue and say that's not artificial intelligence, but that's how I think about it. And so I think we've just gotten to a place where we're doing such complex layering of simple algorithms that the emergent effect of all of those computations occurring like together is this like thing that appears to be lifelike in a way or able to communicate with us. And I think that is that it's like I think of it as okay, so here actually this is a good example. Okay, so with how sampling works, right? Not in the sense of like I'm going to cut a sample and use it in a beat, but like how literal digital signal processing, when you have to sample a wave, the rule is you need to have double the frequencies of the actual frequency to capture the wave in the highest fidelity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can think about that's what's going on with artificial intelligence. If you use a small matrix that is tiny, then that's like not enough sampling rate to capture of a good representation of the thing you're trying to model, right? So that's why it's like when you look at these models, they keep saying, oh, they're getting bigger and bigger and they're having more and more dimensions. It's because it's basically they're getting a more robust digital representation of the like variables or the degrees of freedom that exist inside the human interaction. So in a digital space, right? Because AI wouldn't exist if there wasn't a digital space. There needs to be some digital footprint, some data, something, and only then can the model model the data at that point. So like so again, to me it's just it comes down to a very, very fancy and very, very interesting form of autocorrect, essentially, is what's going on with these language models. But what I find more fascinating is I'm less interested in will the model become a human? And I'm more interested in will humans realize we're not as unique as we think we are, and that we actually are kind of just these aggregate patterns based on the like finite path of life that we've had, and that the whole to me it goes back down to the nurture versus nature debate, and we might actually realize through AI that we are predictable and that's okay, and that's not really a bad thing, and there could be something really good to understanding that as an adaptable creature, systems can push you in different directions, because if we become aware of that, we could actually become stronger as a democracy, I think. Because if we can be aware that we are manipulable, we can be manipulated, that it is simple to slowly push content or create scenarios, and that our minds can be guided to believe certain things. If we can accept that, then we can combat it as well. So I think that AI is going to teach us more about ourselves than take us away from ourselves. In my opinion, my hope, anyways, that's my hope.
Yeah, I would like that because it is true that a lot of what either scares people about AI or what people think AI development's about is like, how do we get a computer closer to being able to understand things like a human? And then umpteenth million movies about like, and then everything went wrong, or then the virus spread, or then and it's like it's that thing of like we always as a species learn from technological advancements. I think there's that stubbornness in terms of industry where like we'll do something for forever even though it ruins everything, and and then we're like, oh, we found this paper that was 1974 they did the study anyway. It's bad now, we don't want to do it.
Exactly.
And
we found a new way to make money, so this is bad now.
and it's like, it's that weird thing too where there will be people who will understand the AI as a tool. There will be some people who will probably deify it and turn it into like some sort of religion. And then
Absolutely.
there will be some people who will, be adverse to it just because it's like any technology. They're like, I've never needed anything other
Yeah.
than these two hands and the sweat on my brow.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's interesting that it's coming into this news cycle right now. I mean, I guess based on a lot of companies trying it and then like how popular it's gotten online, like between the YouTubers making chat GPT content, like this script was written by an AI.
Yeah.
What? And then,
Well,
yeah.
I loved how like it was like chat GPT came out, and then it was like all of a sudden all of these YouTubers were like advanced prompt engineering. I'm like, what do you mean advanced? Like this has only been out in public for months, and somehow you're an advanced prompt engineer. They're like the 5 AI plugins that will help you with your productivity. It's like, dude, you like cut the grift, or at least wait a little bit. Like let the evolution
Yes.
into the grift be more believable.
Yeah, like find something a little bit more relatable. Like you can't just go in being like 5 apps that you just
Yeah,
found out about that will change your life.
exactly. You mean you made them yesterday?
Yeah, that's the thing too, where like thinking of nefarious uses for AI, aside from misinfo, like just the annoying people like the crypto bros who are gonna
Yeah.
use it to make like, I don't know, like I think of like what was the virtual crypto world? I can't even remember what it was called.
Is
Um
that like Decentraland or something like that?
yeah, it's whatever Coin was trying to do. It was like they had a bunch of really cheap animated ads around it, and they had like a crypto coin as like a mascot who would like sing and dance to like badly written jazz. And I'm like, cool, this is what we all want to be in, right? An
And they're
amusement
like,
park.
they're just like, you wouldn't know this, but this was created by AI. So just like this glitching thing, like
Just this broken.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
like I don't know if it wasn't yesterday, but it was last week. Adult Swim put on their Instagram page like, we let AI take over tonight's programming. It's just this like warped mess of like a couple shows mashed together, like fighting for attention in this
That's
like
awesome.
same space, and just
I
weird
like that.
zooms and
Wait, wasn't that show Xavier technically like wasn't that like a somehow like
that
like an auto-generated type of show or something back in like the early 2000s?
was that the one with the guy with the snake arm,
Yeah,
and yeah.
yeah, like very wild like storylines that didn't make any sense.
Yeah, I think that was like a generative. Yeah, because I remember watching that and
Mhm.
not realizing what the premise about it was, and just being like, this is kind of wild.
Yeah,
Like, what
I
is
mean,
this
like,
even about?
was Xavier on Adult Swim AI? Just gonna ask, and I'll
And
ask Google, and then I will ask. See,
Jeeves,
Google gives me a Wikipedia thing, and it says, okay, it was created by people, but it was
it was fed into a machine.
yeah, there is some level of it looks like there's some level of automation to the actual way it was animated, but it does suggest that they had writers. But listen to this description. Xavier features a stylized character by an elaborate and nonlinear plot following the humorous musings of um, internet an internet humanoid pseudo shaman and spiritual seeker named Xavier. The show is known for its use of ideological, critical, dark humor, as well as surrealist and absurdist humor. So maybe it was just on a level of absurdism that we just assumed that it was like from some type of algorithm. But but yeah, that type of visualization always comes to mind when I hear these things. Where like, what happens when AI makes a movie? I'm like that. That's what happens.
It's like, yeah, it turns into this show. Well, and I was thinking of more examples of like how, deep fakes are another AI
Yes. Yeah.
phenomenon. Like I even think of how many years ago, like 5 years ago, when Adobe put out their that software plugin that could like take samples of someone speaking and then generate
Hmm.
speaking audio, and they did it
Yeah.
in like real time with Jordan Peele. And I'm like, oh, this is so we're just going full tilt. Like we could just make up stuff now.
Oh, exactly. I mean, well, we actually got to see that happen. So like with the Trump indictment, right?
Oh,
So
right.
the Trump says he's going to be indicted, whatever. And within a few hours, there are images of him being tackled by cops and things, but they're all fake. But have you seen these videos? I mean,
No.
these pictures. Let me see if I can pull one up and share it with you. But it's actually pretty fascinating. But what I'm interested in, there's also like these videos of like Biden, Trump, and Obama like hanging out, playing like D&D
Yeah,
together and
or
stuff.
Fortnite. I've seen those have been popping up on my feed all week.
Exactly. I've looked at these channels, dude. These channels pump out multiple videos a day. And I'm just like, why is no one having the conversation like, should we be making deep fakes that of you know what I mean, of these types of things? Because at what are we just because it feels like it's just getting us used to it. And then pretty soon we're gonna have this conversation where they're like, all right, I know you saw it on that media channel, but was that one of those AI media channels or was that the real media channel? You know, like and people are like the game, dude. 2024 election cycle is going to be wild, dude. That's what I think is going to happen at
Yeah,
the
I'm
end of
like
it.
at this point, it's just like this weird, like I don't even know what to necessarily because I watched it was commentary alongside Trump's Waco speech
Mhm.
that and it's like, okay, yes, that wasn't as well attended as his other ones, blah 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 blah. But
Yep, yep.
there's just so much of the speech was like it was like, all right, I'm gonna say the most inflammatory thing to get you all screaming, and then
Yep.
as you're screaming, I'll be like, and I'm still gonna complain about losing the election. I still lost. I don't know what happened.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
was all stolen, but we should kill everyone. Yeah.
Was that the one he was like at an airport or something like that?
Yeah, it was like on
Or
a tarmac or something, and there
yeah,
was a stage,
dude,
and
that was so funny because okay, I was like, I find listening to all political speeches hyper fascinating, and actually one of the things that I do on my spare time is I actually use so one of my personal projects that's not music related is I like to scrape YouTube recommendation algorithm. So basically, it's like if you think about when you get recommended a video, the next thing that gets recommended, you could think of that as like an edge on a graph, right? So if the first video is like a little node, the next one it recommends you, or the list of things that it recommends you are all like edges pointing to other different videos, and then you could kind of like you could essentially be able to look at and understand the trend of how you're being recommended things. And then that next step that I do is I like scrape all the audio from the videos and turn it into text. And then I like to analyze like kind of, oh, what's going on? Like, what are they saying? What's going on? Or what type of things are happening? And one of the things I find really funny about that speech specifically is, like you said, yeah, it's all this heavy, inflammatory, like off the top talking. Like it's almost like he's not reading a script. Like he's just kind of like, my friends, you wouldn't believe it, my friends.
oh my
Oh
god,
my God. Everyone's like, oh, Trump. He's like, yeah, look at these people behind me. Oh, yeah, this is some good people, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, like the last like 15 minutes, like literally music starts to play.
I was
Like,
gonna say like that part. I was like, what? They're doing
yeah,
cinematic, like inspirational movie speeches now.
I it was like that was like too much for me to handle because it was like I literally I was just kind of like, wait a second, like how is anyone taking this seriously? Because if I was standing in that audience, I would be laughing. Like even if I like wholeheartedly agreed with everything he was saying, I would not be able to help myself from laughing because it was just so much. Like I just think of like Mr. Krabs from SpongeBob with the little tiny violin.
Yeah.
And he's just like, in our country as never before. It's like, all right, maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong. I don't even know at this point because I can't stop from laughing at the fact that you're actually doing a backdrop of like violin music for like 15 minutes, like seriously. And then right after that, like cuts into like the YMCA or something. And they're
Yeah,
just like, yeah, America.
we did it, guys. I'm dancing.
We successfully did a speech. No,
Yeah,
but yeah, I don't,
that part was crazy because it, like, in terms of, like, thematic, it's like it's supposed to be this last, like, 30 minutes of, like, just, like, pure, like, pure, like, inflammation, like, just, like, talking about, like, how, like, how is anyone taking this seriously? Because if I was standing in that audience, I would not be able to help myself from laughing because it was just so much. Like I just think of like Mr. Krabs from SpongeBob with the little tiny violin. And he's just like, in our country has never before. It's like, all right, maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong. I don't even know at this point because I can't stop from laughing at the fact that you're actually doing a backdrop of like violin music for like 15 minutes, like seriously. And then right after that, like cuts into like the YMCA or something. And they're just like, yeah, America. We successfully did a speech. No, Yeah, ground swelling of like, but I'm coming back. I'm gonna
Yeah.
beat America into a pulp and reshape it into a white utopia. Here we go. And then all he's doing is like, it's like inspirational music, which I want to see if they just YouTubed like inspirational orchestra, 10-hour playlist and just played
Yes.
that. Like I'm really hoping that was the case. But the fact that like he like that whole time it's supposed to be like this uplifting thing, and he's like, our bridges are crumbling, everything's dying, your jobs are going away to China, everything's dying, we're going to die. It's the worst America. I'm
Yeah.
like, who would vote for this guy even on like just the principle of like he just keeps hating on.
Exactly.
Like spend 15 minutes being like, everyone sucks, this whole place is terrible, it's a dump.
Yeah, exactly.
But I will say that
just 2 years ago, it was a perfect place. It was the most perfect America. And within 2 years, Joe Biden.
by himself, even though he's always asleep, that's Sleepy Joe.
That's both parties do this, and I find it so funny. Like I sent you a link. If you were to look at the images that come back, just know like a majority of those are fake, and look at how real they look, and it's insane what could come in the future. But
Whoa.
So Trump's main argument is I don't need to campaign on any of my policies because my policies were perfect. I was just stolen of the chance to implement them further. That's like his whole argument. Right. And then Biden's whole argument is we're going to change America, but Trump was so effective in what he did that everything's still his fault, and everything we're doing is going to be better, but you can't see any of the results of anything that we're doing because Trump was so powerful that it ruined everything. And I was kind of like, wait, both these storylines suck. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, like somehow both of these like, octogenarian men or near octogenarian are like somehow the most powerful deities in existence, but then also feckless cowards who can't do anything.
Exactly.
It's just like, okay, cool. Like, I wish I could have a job with that wide of a review scope. Yeah, Dutcher's really great at piano. He's the best pianist I've ever heard. He also never touched music ever. He sucks. The worst person ever. But I'm paying him $10 million.
Yeah, he's phenomenal at being terribly great.
Well, and it got me thinking with AI in regards to politics too. It's like there's always this like, the media turns it into like team sports with all the data and the metrics, but then like there's real knowledge to be gleaned of like, okay, differences in how communities vote, how looking at, okay, why did this, all the data around voter, the need to improve voter conditions for a lot of people with all the data. But then at the same time, there's like, oh, how easy would it be to just like, put out a bunch of like hit pieces, just put it on a loop, just hit go on an AI, and then suddenly there's millions of articles being generated in real time or something.
Well, and I'm cynical on that level. And when I started working with AI and kind of getting into it, it felt very like new, and I was kind of like, oh wow, this stuff is like cutting edge. And then when you start to like research the math behind it, you start to realize, dude, they had some of these ideas in the 50s. They just didn't have the technology, they just didn't have the amount of data. So people within the right scope of like life who've had access to that knowledge, these communities have been thinking about these tools for a long time. So then what I started realizing was like, it was actually when Musk bought Twitter, and he made this claim that 80% of Twitter is bots or whatever. I don't know if that's true, but what I know is that I feel like I have seen on videos that you would expect it, that there are definitely like bots and feeds, right? Like I think that that's knowable at this point. And it just started getting me thinking like, wait a second, it's actually highly probable that one level of information warfare would be for countries to use language models as fake accounts that can just spawn up whenever they want and just say random stuff and get it out and then just delete their account or something like that, or get off. Or I find these weird videos this one video, I remember when Tucker Carlson was doing the I have the Jan 6, for having so much of that footage, like what happened? I mean, we got like 2 nights out of 44,000 like hours. You got like what, like 20 seconds of something. Come on.
The biggest scoop ever. It's 10 minutes of completely doctored, or at least edited together footage.
Yes, absolutely. No, that was very upsetting for everything that they built it up to be. But those videos, for some reason, I remember in my YouTube account, I was getting recommended the actual episode off Fox. Like, that's weird, because like the name was like some name. It, like, I don't know, it wasn't an American name. I don't want to say what country I could have think it was or wasn't from, but it just wasn't an American account. And I went into that account, and it was like, as of today, it was like all Carlson and Fox. But as of yesterday and everything before, it was like knitting and like just like putty slime. So I'm kind of like, all right, did someone like hack this account and like somehow use it? But then I'm like, but this account has like such low reach. Like, why would anyone? But then how is it getting to me? Like, so I see stuff like that, and I'm like, yeah, that something is happening there, but I don't know enough about it to call it out and say anything. But yeah, when I think about the things that I've learned and the things, so I actually made I made this thing called Twitter Ritual before the API became super expensive and I no longer care to interact with the I'm not sure if you're familiar with like that, but yeah, the API is now like way too expensive to use. It used to be free. Yeah. So it used to be a free thing. You could just grab tweets from like the back end and programmatically do stuff. But anyways, I made 4 bot accounts, and what they did is that they would talk to each other. So what I would do is they would like find a topic that was like a trending topic, and then it would like generate like an image off of it for one of them, and then the other one would try to summarize the image, and then that one would use that and comment on the other ones, and it would create this like little 4-way interaction that was just like simulating interactions, you know what I mean? And I thought it was fun. It was more so like an exercise for me. I thought it was like fun, but in doing that, I was just like, wait, I'm just a guy by myself, and I'm making 4 bots talk to themselves pretty intelligibly, and it looks real. Now imagine if I was like a dedicated state team. It's just like, it's simple what's possible out there. So that's why I think the biggest thing out of all this AI stuff, and I want to pivot to creative stuff with it in a second, but the biggest thing about it is the literacy of it, is that as long as people don't get caught up in the hype, don't get caught up in the like kind of sensationalization of it, and get to the idea that it is a tool, that it is awesome. Do not get me wrong about this. I think it's phenomenal. I love the science behind it, but we got to get people to not believe. Like imagine if people actually believed that cars were a super sophisticated horse and that they were going to take over all the horses. Like
there's 100 horses in this power.
Exactly. So I think it's just like that. We just have a new superpower tool, and that's cool. But what's really cool with it, like I said, is going to music. Is so this is something I've been thinking that's been super fascinating to me. So there's couple ways you can think about making music, right? It's like I want to generate actual audio, right? Where you're having a model who knows how to create a frequency space and makes the spectrum and adds in the right harmonies and all that, which is possible. And I've done that, and that's fine, and that's cool. But I'm having a lot more fun lately, like half using bits of AI and then like manually filtering things and making these like MIDI algorithms that are like really cool, and like getting them to like intentionally like converge or diverge at like certain moments. And it's like I'm starting to think like, I don't know, that's been super exciting for me at the end of the day, is like kind of stripping down AI to like a really simple version of itself, and then giving it like a simple task, like write an 8-part harmony, and like I want to like have the system kind of go down for a bit, but then I want them to intersect, and I want these voices to be in unison throughout, and kind of just giving it these basic commands and then letting it run. And what's really fun is you can type in like, I want 3,000 MIDI notes back, or I want 20,000 MIDI notes back. And then it just, boom, gives you this huge sheet of music like in seconds. And then the real fun is like, now let me go in and edit this. Now let me go in and like see like what patterns are really there, which then just leads me to actually building another AI that I program to look for certain patterns, and then it pulls those out. So you get this like system that gets pumped out, and then you get this other person who's kind of like the editor, and then they pull out these things that I've told it to focus on, and then you have like a reasonable piece of like 4 minutes of music essentially, that then just you gotta put it into Finale and finesse it, make it look readable and playable, or you can just leave it in Logic or whatever people. I'm a Logic user these days, but yeah, you can just leave it in that and just start playing with different instruments and timbres and stuff. But that to me is so fun. But what it gives me this intuition towards the AI, right? Like, and that's what I'm trying to figure out ways to do with music lately, is like, how can I create fun, accessible plugins that like can give a composer who's familiar with like programmatic composing and get AI in their hands in a really like tangible way that ideally will also teach them about math a little bit, give them that little insight. Because as a composer, when I really truly put together like math and music, it sounds like everyone's been saying it for 1,000 years, but realistically, like there is no difference. Now there's a technical difference, right? Like how I get from like A to B in a sheet of music or in a scale versus like how I get from one integer to the next in a mathematical system. The technical details are different, but the shape of what is happening is kind of the same. There's these series of patterns that get bigger and smaller and connect and are dissonant or consonant or convergent and divergent at certain areas. And yeah, I have found that has gotten me access to so many cool thoughts and has made me feel so confident about interacting with these new systems in life that are popping up. And it's like, all right, so how can I get other composers into that? And you know what I mean? That's like, so there's little tools that I'm making that are not nearly at a place where I would feel confident showing, but I might give you a audio recording after this of some of the wacky piano music I've been making. Because right now it's a little funny sounding because it's like I haven't gotten it perfect yet. So there's like really cool moments and then really like chaotic, like weird moments. But yeah, I'll send it to you, and I'm curious to hear your opinion on them. But yeah, that's the direction I want to see people go. Is like, screw the dystopic narrative. Forget that. If that's going to happen, it's going to happen with or without you. So like, let's just focus on how can we make this fun? How can we make it cool? How can we expand, create creative practices with it? And again, use it as a tool, not replace. You know what I mean? Like the idea of replacing people is so absurd. Like, what is AI but a reflection of people? So why would we replace people with it? That'd be like, hey, now that I have a mirror, I don't need to go anywhere. I'll just send my mirror everywhere I go.
and it's clever and pretty on the nose once you step back and think about it. It's like very clever reframing of who workers have to be worried about. It's not the employer who's making these decisions to outsource your labor to tech. It is the tech itself that is just so compelling that it's just going to come in one day. It's going to walk through those doors and be like, get off the line. It's my turn. It's exactly. like, no, it's literally still the same dude who you think is going to give you $1 billion because you retweeted him. Like that dude is going to outsource your labor because he wants to make another floating space palace. I don't know, like whatever people who are hyper billionaires at this point make, yachts too big to leave ports, underground tunnel taxi services that don't make sense.
What I love is Musk was saying about the workforce in that space. He was like, if we just get robots making all the things, then capital is infinite and our GDP could become infinite. And I'm just like, I mean, that sounds like a cool idea in math, but what are we talking about? Like capital is like a reflection of resource is not infinite. Like it's just yeah, sometimes these people get either we don't know what's going on and we are just these little plebeian minds who can't wrap our head around something that they know, or they're a little out of touch with how like things are actually going to work out. Like they theoretically think they know how it's going to work out, but they forget that, we're not, I don't think humans, it just doesn't make sense to me. When I try to like think through it, I'm just like, no way, dude. Like, unless you have some crazy person who's willing to just throw countries into levels of poverty that, like, their own country. And now obviously countries are willing to do that to other countries, but
Yes.
I'm saying, like, if you're willing
Yeah.
to do that to your own country, like, I don't understand the benefit. Like, there's
Yeah.
no, you know what I mean? Like, so I just don't see that actually happening, but I could be wrong. I'll admit it. I've been wrong before, and it's possible. So so maybe I'm wrong here, but I just don't see why anyone would destroy their own labor force with a, like, concept of compute. I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I think, I feel like Elon would be the first person to really, do that on a wider scale. I mean, he's got robotics with the car company, but people are still dying in his facilities every year. Like, I think he still tops the leaderboards in that regard. But it's also that idea of, like, because I've been listening to I'm on part 3 of a 6-part Behind the Bastards dissection of the origins of the Illuminati, and like how their little tentacles have copied pasted into a bunch of other movements. But how it was funny just how those movements just started as like dudes wanting to be, we want a secret social club that we have rituals and passwords and super cool. And then as soon as someone's like, this is kind of stupid, then they're like, you've seen through the veil. We actually have another tier of deeper, more secret thing. And it's just people not wanting to seem stupid. And then the people grifting being like, I got to make up a religion right now. It's due tomorrow. And then it's like, so when I think about that, it's like people making these impulsive decisions after they've said something very grandiose. It's like, every time I hear that from like an Elon, it's like, we're gonna go to Mars. I'm like, there's some poor team now they're somehow doing crunch hours to a goal that doesn't make sense to try and get to Mars. Yeah, it's like, we need to get to Mars. It's like, when? I don't go. Just keep
it's
going.
Very important we get there.
So that's that's going to be, to some degree, I think they're talking up AI so that they have a justification with both their fans, like the STEM stands of Elon when he guts his workforce or something, or when he implements AI. And I mean, he's already, I guess, doing that in a way that's having to get his vehicles recalled. But like the idea of, like, just on the surface level of the messaging around it, it's like, okay, we have AI. Like, this is going to be the future. I'm a tech dude. This is tech. Awesome. And then on the other end, it's people who are like, hey, I just like, can I still go to work? Like, what? You're just yelling about like how it's going to change the labor force. I'm here, labor force over here.
No, that's what I know exactly, because with this idea of like the AI being hyped up, I think that we can see a similar thing happening with the internet bubble. We can see there's these like little bubbles that occur, and I actually think we are starting to see a plateau on the AI bubble. I think it was very fast and very quick, and that's because when it blew up and got very fast, it was basically a few companies fighting over the territory, and I think the territory has kind of been won. It is Microsoft, OpenAI. Like, I think that those are going to be the big leaders, and then you're going to have Google, Bloomberg, you're going to have Apple. Well, yeah, they're the ones up there with OpenAI. Right? They're going to be the leaders in the same way that like Linux is kind of like the leading open source operating system. Exactly. Like, now, granted, ChatGPT 4 and 5 are not going to be open source, but they're going to be the leading product in the market. And if you look at their stocks and look like there was like a little inversion, like everything that kind of left Google like went into Microsoft. And I'm simplifying it some, but there was a clear market shift in tech. And if you notice, the other interesting thing was right before all this big AI hype happened, the tech industry was plummeting because, during COVID, they hired all these people. They were like, the metaverse is going to happen. We're never going to leave our homes again. And we're going to just live inside of our Oculus goggles forever. And then they were like, wait a second. that's not happening, and they fire everybody, and it's crumbling, and the banks are crashing, and I feel like it was like Microsoft was like, yo, this is our opportunity to like just like grab a bunch of the market really quick, and boom, they do it. They force Google into like trying to release theirs, and it like flopped really quick, and like, you know, they're like, haha, Google's, your answers were wrong, and then, you know, stocks plummet. And like, to me, that's what that was. Like, that's what that whole thing was, is it was just a big like narrative game inside the stock market that, yeah, will have ripples out into society, no doubt, but
right,
that's what it was, and it's kind of already done. The pieces have kind of settled in that sense. There are clear players now. But with Elon specifically, what I find really funny, a couple things that you said that I love thinking about is, it's a little bit of a misnomer to say it was a recall, because it was just he had to send out an update. So that would be like saying every time, because like no vehicles had to leave like where they were. He just sent an update out in the same way that our, you know, Macs or PCs, they have these automatic, that would be like saying every one of those is a recall. So like, so that's like one thing for us to think about when we hear that, because there is some very, I think, slanted and directed opinions against Musk, because he is a competitor inside of a space where he no longer seems to have the good favor of media, right? Like now media trashes him, whereas just a year or two ago, before he bought Twitter, like he was a wonder child still.
He was Iron Man.
Yeah, literally, like that was the
in an Iron Man suit.
Exactly. But yeah, so yeah, all that stuff, it just cracks me up. I think we're watching a bunch of billionaires having a pissing contest.
Yep.
And you know, it's fun though. That's the thing I have to keep reminding, is like, as long as no one's getting hurt, it's fun. Now, if misinformation starts happening in crazy ways, if we come to find out that these models create like an environmental hazard because of the amount of energy they're using just to exist, or we find out that there's like numerous amounts of like slave children digging in mines to get minerals,
to get cobalt.
Like, yeah, exactly. Once that story starts to come out, I think we're going to have a different reaction, and we'll maybe even see some regulation come about these things. So I think that's I'm interested to see when that narrative comes about, and we're kind of seeing it right with the moratorium that's being proposed, which I think is so funny, because I don't know if you know so Elon was an initial co-founder of OpenAI, right? So he helped start it as a non-for-profit place to research AI and stuff. And total speculation here, this is coming from purely my brain. I'm potentially making this up, but I just love it. Is like, so I imagine he wanted to buy Twitter in part to create a language AI, but like OpenAI, who he had previously working with, went with Microsoft rather than with him, because he initially wanted to buy OpenAI some years back, and they kind of were like, no, dude, like we're not going to let you run this. Like, we have our own thing. And then he started like going in this other direction, and he ends up with Twitter, you know, where he's going to a social platform, open it up, open the algorithm, open, and he creates that narrative or presentation of himself. And then OpenAI, he's just bashing them all of a sudden. He's just like, they're closed, they're not open. But I kind of think he's a little salty that they got to market first. And then now that's why he's like kind of like, wait, we should all stop. We should all stop.
Hold on.
Yeah, let me catch up, then we can press go.
Yeah, I shared an article about that, and I in my story, and I put a caption of like, is like, he's calling for this so that he can, you know, upload his consciousness to an AI. Like, it's like, we got to wait until Elon himself becomes AI.
Then we can have it come out.
Yeah. Until he becomes Skynet, then.
Dude, Elon Musk as a search engine AI would be so annoying though, because you'd ask it a question, he'd be like, why don't you go look it up? Like, what the hell?
Or he'd just start rattling, like he'd start abstracting it to just talk about like systems and like using large words about like, it's like, well, I just want to look up a good restaurant. Well, you know, a restaurant isn't really something you find, it's something you are. And I'm going to talk about that a little more, and how the relationship of restaurant pieces are actually part of our entire sphere of understanding and human. You
And
just
that's why I need you to invest in my new restaurant ventures.
that's why I need you to invest in my crypto restaurant chain. It's
the food is digital.
I actually saw and then I want to touch back on the creative part of AI for a sec too, but I thought of I saw a video on what felt like it was like the strangest combination of like this of type of event. I mean, it was $1,000 for like a 7-hour eating experience, and it's in like a room with like this giant projecting dome, like almost like a planetarium, and it's like all very like to a T. Everyone's all the chef and staff are walking out serving these dishes, and they're all gastronomy creations and weird art food sculptures, and some of them were like you have to open a chicken cage and eat the chicken leg that actually tastes like this thing, but the whole time you're having animated chickens clucking in a cacophonous way to teach you about the craziness of the food industry. And I'm like, who it's for like a wealthy liberal's son, maybe? Like, you're gonna go learn and feel something, but you're also going to do this thing that you can flex on other people.
Yeah. It's like while you eat the steak, you have to kill a cow like at the same time.
Like some of it was just like unsettled. Like there was one that it looked like from the eyelids up, it looked like a skull cap, and you removed the skull cap, and then you'd eat the brain that tasted like, I don't know, guilt or something. And then you learn about how you can't eat people. I don't know what, but just like these experiences. But I was thinking with creativity and AI, there's like, I mean, there's instances of like, certain apps that are like generative. There's one, I think it's Bloom.io, or Bloom is the name of the app, but it was like I don't know if Terry Riley was it was some contemporary classical composer was involved in its creation, and it like, I would use it sometimes to improvise off of live because it created these ambient textures that would always change.
Oh, cool.
And it could have different, like, this note seems to be played more. I can work around this key. And then I think of the first time I heard of AI as it related to music, or at least thought about it, was when those sites would pop up advertising like AI mixing services. Like, just upload your file and then an AI is going to do a quick edit, and it's $25 or whatever price.
Those I kind of like, I like and dislike those, right? Like I hate when people, like, I understand people need to make money, and I understand that I'm all for people coming up with cool ways to make money, that's fine, but it's like, I think about like the world of plugins, right? Like it's at a world now where like, okay, there's maybe like 4 or 5 big brands where they can like actually sell you their library for like $1,000 or whatever, and people will buy it. But and those people are like, kind of, they consider themselves professional, you know what I mean? They're kind of like, I bought this because I want to do a professional thing, whatever that means.
Right.
But then there's just like the world of plugins, of free plugins, right? And it's kind of like, I kind of feel like you're a little bit of a dick if you are like making a like delay plugin and you're like, and I'm going to charge you $30. It's like, well, it better be physical. Like, I don't like, like I don't, you better like mail me an actual pedal then, because I can go get this for free. Because it's just math, at the end of the day, it's just math. So that's again why it comes back down to this literacy thing for me. And when it comes down to the audio aspect of it versus like the MIDI aspect is, well, real quick before I dive off to that, I want to go back to Bloom. So is Bloom a like thing you put into like Ableton or something, and you gave it like an instrument and it would like generate MIDI? Or was it just something that it's a straight up app, it has it's self-contained completely, and you just have little settings to configure it, and then it just goes?
Yeah, Okay, it wasn't Bloom.io. That's a
Yeah, because
some
there's a language
startup
model
thing.
called Bloom. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to find it.
Hmm.
As far as I remember, it was like there are no, like you could change parameters, but like in the how the app was displayed, you could
Hmm.
touch stuff and then that would create an instance and then that would
I see.
ripple, or it would create its own ripples and then start, maybe within to a certain harmony or to a key or to a,
Yep.
whatever input you put into it. Not as rigid as a like a gridded out, like I don't
Hmm.
know, like a beat maker where it's like, oh, just
Right.
plug in all the squares and then it
Hmm.
cycles. But
There's
yeah.
kind of like there's like a sonic environment, and you could kind of like touch it, and it would like there'd be effects within the environment, kind of, and you could
Yeah,
move it
and
around.
and and it would, I liked it
I
because
like that.
it wasn't solely dependent on your input, but your input would change how the environment would,
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Hmm.
continue to change.
That's awesome. I really like that. Um, the yeah, because that's cool, because then that's a tool that like you can actually have that human feedback with, right? You can actually have this interaction. And so if you're doing a performance or like playing on your own, you can have that, like, because what I love about music is when you're playing with people, right, there's that nuance, and it kind of turns into a communication, and it's an expression that's also a communication, and you're like kind of doing this back and forth, and the music is a product of that, right? Like, so that is I like things that really encourage that. On like another note, there's a model. It's like called a variational autoencoder, and essentially what this means is that like it learns how to like take I got it. So like if you were to take like a piece of music that's like Chopin or whatever, right? We have analytical techniques to get it down to like, oh, this is a one chord going to a flat six minor, going to like a sharp four, and we're back
Right.
at one. And we can understand the music and that like compressed representation, right? So like some models, there's basically ways to shrink down the information, or compress really the information down to like finite simple numbers, and then you can like adjust those numbers a tiny bit and then blow it back up, and then it's like a slightly new thing, if that makes
Mm.
sense. So it's like, so you can take it like, if I'm listening to you play piano, and I can like sonically abstract or compress the general chord progression, then I can like expand that chord progression into playing guitar or bass, right? And it's technically the same thing, but it's like different because I'm like materializing it through a different instrument, right? So there's models that can kind of do that, for lack of a better explanation of it. But what you can do, so what you can do with these things now is you can like give it like words that you want to say, or you can give it music and it will like complete it, or like in some instances you can be like, I want you to like sing a Frank Sinatra song with these words and have it come out, and it will happen. And then you can like sample it. So that stuff has been extremely fascinating for me to like
Yeah.
play with. They take a long time to generate, which is probably why they're not that popular right now. It's like it takes like 24 hours, sometimes 48 hours
Uh,
to get like 30 seconds of audio. So you have to be pretty dedicated to like care about that and let your computer run. Or, you can do it on the cloud, or however it is you're going to do the computations. But to me, that has been so cool, because I can definitely see people having an issue with it the same way they did with Dolly, being like, well, is it copyright? Is it this or that? But
mhm.
I think like at this point, I don't really care. It's kind of like, I just find it so fascinating to like see a model mathematically piece together like the frequency shapes that sound. And because like, again, I'm going to send you a little packet of things that you can like, maybe you can attach it to wherever you display the podcast as well, in the description or something, or maybe
Oh
it's just
yeah.
for you, or you can just listen to it yourself, whatever you want to do with it. But but it's like cool, because it's like when you're listening to these things, they're still not so sophisticated that it's 100% human passing. And this is my favorite phase of AI, where it's right before it's human passing. It's like, it's almost like you're listening to a hallucination, because you're like, this sounds like words, but when I like try to hear what it's saying, it's just sounds. They're not actually words. It's like the AI understands the shape of a singing voice, but doesn't actually know how to implement the word into the sound yet. So it's you get these like almost like Sigur Rós, like fake language type of thing, where you can follow it and there's like an emotional feeling to it, but they're not actual words, but they sound like words. I don't know. Like,
is it like the Miku pedal? I don't know if you know about that.
Oh, kind of. Yeah, right. Where it takes like the human timbre. Yeah, it's just not as not as like that, but it is like that.
Or I think of like what it's like oh, what's the game? You know, it's like a simulator game, but you're I think it's mouth simulator or speak simulator. It's where you're literally having to like, all right, you have to you know, you're an alien undercover, like some absurd premise, and then you have to talk, but the way you talk is like there's separate controls for how your tongue moves, how your jaw moves, how your throat opens. So you're like trying to sound words, and it's like welcome, and it's like the most of, you know, because it's a goofy game, it'll ding even if it's like still sounds off. It's like close enough. But I think of awesome. That kind of like it hears, yeah, it's like it hears what it wants to do, but then it goes to do it, and it's like someone discovering they can't sing by just immediately trying to sing for the first time. They're like oh no, oh.
This takes muscle.
It's
there's
training.
Training key is the key training for the models too.
Yeah.
Because I see a world where when it comes to music, it's like in the same way that a modern composer is probably pretty familiar with a finale, right? Like I think any modern composer at minimum transcribes their handwritings into finale, right? But you know, based on our education, the time that we were in studios together, to what I imagine going on now, there's probably much more of an infinite emphasis of starting inside of a DAW and then playing around in that space and then translating out to finale or something if they're going to put it into sheet music, right? I think that's pretty common these days, at least to template out things, because it's great. So I can hear what this rhythm sounds like. I can do that, right? So I just see down the road, we're going to have more algorithmic tools essentially, so that like, instead of music being about, I don't know, whatever music is about. Well, I don't know what people think music is about, to be honest, because for me, it's always been kind of patterns and shapes and textures. And I've always been someone who kind of like detached from words. You know, I mean, I have nothing against songwriters. You know, I think it's a phenomenal art and I'm very much enthralled when I hear it. But as a creator, I'm very much more interested in being like, what happens to this pattern over time? How does this texture like integrate or not with what's happening? And, you know, that's where I've always been with it. So for me, I just see AI as this like extension of that process. And when I'm composing, I don't feel any qualms of how I make the sound. Now, when I'm playing an instrument, I want to be the one playing the instrument for sure. But at the end of the day, like I use pedals, you use pedals. Can we say that the pedal is, is that breaking some rule of it being authentic? I don't know.
I was thinking of that with like, because I want to get the Mark II of the Mood from Chase Bliss, and I'm like, that's that pedal, like it'll learn what you're playing, loop it back to you, and then keep learning what you're still playing after that, and keep adding, and like, you know, it'll build up layers, take away like it's just in real time, like interacting with your playing, and it's like, oh, okay, that's another example of
that's cool. Like that's awesome. No one should have a problem with that. Right? So that's where again, where I always think about it from the creative place first, and then I'll go out and try to project these ideas onto like, well, what would that look like in a societal or other space? But it's a kind of, again, it's more about how can we get people to understand what's happening in a very interactive, tangible way, so that they understand it in the same way where I theoretically know how to build a house. I understand the general tools needed to build a house. Do I want to do that? Not really. Not really inclined to do that. But right now, I think a lot of people, AI is just a black box to them. To them, it's potentially, like you said, a deity, or it's potentially, going to take over the world, or an alien. But it's not. It's just a machine. It's an algorithm, and it's a thing. So it's like, I want to get people from the creative standpoint, at minimum, to feel empowered by AI, rather than, because all the fear mongering that we're seeing about war and stock market misinformation, that's happening on a microcosm within the art world too, right? Like, will I be able to freelance? Will all these ad agencies who I used to hook up with cool graphics, are they just going to pump out something with Dolly? Are they just going to use this AI thing to make a music, and now they don't have to get royalties? Or, and like jumping out of music really quick, with movies, we've actually already kind of see this happen with the recycling of IP, right? Like, imagine the amount of writers not being paid every time they just remake a movie, right? Like
the Hallmark Christmas movie empire. It's the same movie done 1,000 times.
Exactly. So like, it's like, so this types of things are already happening in the market. So we have ways around them, right? It's like, to the point where, because we can identify a Marvel movie versus a authentic, like, cinematic creation, or genuine original creation, I'll say, because Marvel can be fun. I'm not going to crap on anybody here, but like, but we know the difference as a consumer and as a creator, and we know that there's the opportunity to go to like big CGI, like blockbuster, big bucks movie, or we can go the route and try to make this feel authentic and very human. And it's like, as long as both lanes exist, there, I like, ideally shouldn't be a problem, right? Like, because I just see a world where there's some music that is, actually, I think a better way to put it is, I think aesthetic will be more on the forefront. People will be like way more intentional about their aesthetic, where I think people are pretty intentional now, but I think a lot of people still kind of have this, oh, this is just who I am, this is just my aesthetic. And I personally don't know if I believe that anymore. I think there's a truth to your own pattern or nature or whatever. But at the end of the day, if you want to make a lo-fi beat, there's a way to do that. If you want to make a classical sounding thing, there's a way to do that. There's there's a modern jazz, fusion jazz, bebop jazz, trad jazz. Like, we all have the aesthetics. They're understood. They're more compartmentalized. And I think will become more expressive through aesthetic versus just claiming to be a product of the aesthetic, right? And I think that's cool. I think that should be liberating, and that should give us the freedom as creators to say, hey, I'm going to pull from this and I'm going to pull from that, and I can't quite create this, so I'll have AI generate a little bit of this, and then I'll reach out to a friend and maybe layer it in some way, or like, that's when we get to that hybrid confidence of creation. I think that's going to be, I'm really excited for the creators to push that level, rather than just, drop the instrument and be like complaining about it. It's just like, dude, who cares? Just like, let's just get on the train of like utilizing it and making it fun and cool versus, because I feel like the same things happened with DAWs at one point. Yeah, they're all like, oh, there's DAWs. No one will ever need a real human again. Turns out we need them more than ever, because it turns out sampling is the best way to use a DAW. Well, in my opinion, sampling is the best way to use a DAW. Synthetic sounds purely from sine tones are cool and all, but when you sample something, it's just the ability to layer people who are never in the same room together and get, I think, it to Pimp a Butterfly, right? Like, what a cool album, because he like just went through that process of like, I'm going to talk to all my cool friends, I'm going to sample bits and pieces of them, and we're going to like collage it together and make this like out of time, beautiful thing, right?
Yeah. It's so true that like any tech that's been developed, there's always going to be there's going to be, like when like handheld video camcorders came out, it was like the first thing was the fear from the media. It was like, kids are just going to be looking through those viewer lenses. They're never going to look up and see the world. They're just going to look at it through their camera, and they want to film everything. And then, it turned into like, oh, well, now we have this, new markets popped up, creativity was born from using these specific kinds of equipment. And then iterating on it led to improving those technologies. And then eventually those technologies got more and more compact, and now they're just in our phones. So it's like, yeah, it's like, okay, we're at that fear stage. AI is gonna kill us all. Turn your 401k into gold. I don't know, but
Yeah.
whatever. It's the next illogical step in that
Yeah.
response. Uh, but then, yeah, then there's people like you who have an understanding of tech and specifically AI that can start to, get gears turning of like, okay, how can can I use it to make this part of my workflow easier,
Mhm.
or can I use it to generate ideas to, you know, get through this brain fog or this writer's block?
Mhm.
Like, just
Exactly.
it's like being able to have, or even in the simple way. I think of all the jazz professors I had who were like, you kids, you don't know what we had to find the spot on the record and drop the needle, and we had to physically get up and put it back, and you could just find a transcription online. And I'm like, yeah, but then that just makes things also in an interesting space where like it's easier to access these things, but then
Mhm.
the level of understanding and talent has gone way up because of that.
Absolutely.
And now there's just that natural, like, as much as people are collaborating, there's also that competition of like, okay, we have access to all these things, but then we're also
Mhm.
inundated with everyone's like best creative highlight reels every day, all the time.
Yeah.
So, you know, who cares if I'm not owning one Amat Jamal record for 6 years?
Yeah,
Like, it's like
exactly. And
there's so many other things I have to focus on now.
exactly. And I always think about what is the expression? What is it that you're actually trying to do, right? Because I think back in the days where, you're looking at like you're pinpointing the spot on the record, you're listening to again and again, trying to transcribe it, trying to play it. That at that time was the height of technology, first off. So they need
Yep.
to, because at that time, I would imagine there was even older people being like, we had to just play it. Like, there was no recording.
You can't put it in
So
your laptop.
exactly. So I think like what is it that someone wants to be a vessel of? Do you want to be a vessel of yourself as a musician, which that's fine, which
Yep.
that is going to be a little bit of ego involved. You're going to have a little bit of criticism of the person who's better than you, or you're going to like maybe potentially not, I don't know, but I tend to find people often have that criticism of like they have it easier than me. Or do you want to be a like representative of the art form, right?
Yes.
And that if you're a representative of the art form, you're most likely going to end up being more of a teacher. You're going to be really happy when younger people are way better than you because you're watching the art grow. And you're like, yes, this is becoming more expressive. There's more nuance, more detail, more people involved in it. And if that's the goal, then I don't see where anything being easier is a problem as long as it's advancing the art, right? Now,
Right.
if some technology plateaus the art and like nothing goes beyond that, then I would be like, hey, we need to like, why is this stopping the growth of the art? This, whatever this is, fundamentally must not be helping because it's making everyone do the same exact thing versus making, rather than giving someone a platform to jump off of the, what's the
Right.
phrase? Standing on the shoulders of giants, right? Like
Yes.
you want to stand on the shoulder of the giants. You don't want to have to grow to be the giant every time, right?
Yep.
Like that. It's too exhausting. It's too crazy. And then there's the idea of what you said, and this is what I love. Or do you want to be, and I kind of love this. I'm not 100% in this space, but I do love it a little bit. A representative of the competitiveness in the art. And that's where you
Yeah.
get these like people who are just like, it's like they're just like ripping out videos left and right. They got like, I'm collaborating with this, I'm doing this, I'm in this, and like that grind set. Like I was in that pace in my early 20s and throughout
Yep.
like most of my 20s really. And I loved that. I loved like feeling like I was on the pulse, cutting edge. And it was like less about myself. It was more about bringing the new thing to like the musical market, you know what I mean? And that
Yeah.
high of like being like, yeah, I'm aware of the newest thing and I'm going to do the thing and it's going to be in the scene now because I brought it. And that was a cool moment. And I'm no longer doing that. Like I'm not that person. There's new 20-year-olds doing that,
Right.
coming out of college, like ripping through stuff and like that's, and again, then my love for the art comes out of me and I'm like, yes, I'm so glad someone picked it up where I left off because it would be exhausting to still be doing that going into my 30s,
Yeah.
having to care. about every single thing. Whereas now I feel like with yourself, it's like you have these lanes that you thrive in, and people know to go to you for those things, and you can just kind of do that and bring that along, you know. So I think when a creator thinks about technology in the space wherever they're creating, you have to be honest with yourself about like, what is it that you're actually trying to do right now? And then own it. Like if you're going to be jealous of the guy who's creating the technology thing, then own that you are in this mode where you want your ego to be a face of something. And I challenge the people who are doing that. Become better than the machines then. I want to see that. Like use your human ability that you feel is fundamentally greater than the expressivity of a machine, and make me see it too. Like if you know it to be true, let everyone else see it and push yourself to that level where you are maxing it out. And that will be awesome, because that's going to do nothing but elevate everything. So it's okay if those egomaniacs are out there, as long as they're putting in the work. If they're egomaniacs and just doing like some like sideline coaching and criticizing everything, well then that's just sad.
Well, and that made me think of two things. When you said becoming better than the machine, it made me think of like the phenomenon of like, okay, electronic music gets made, and then there's cultures developed around it, and then it iterates, and there's different expressions, and then cut to, you know, at the same, almost in the same timeline, I would think, like in the 80s. I don't know how far back beatboxing goes, but like the beatboxing communities, I feel like it would be more in line with hip hop, but like eventually you have, you know, people like Reaps One or Darnie or what's his name, Alem, or all these beatboxer dudes who can imitate dubstep sounds, or like make insanely like 4-part layered, like, all right, they're doing a noise when they're breathing in, when they're breathing out, they're putting something in the back of their throat to sing, and then they're putting something in their, you know, in their lips or their nose to like imitate a noise. And it's like, okay, now we have people who grew up listening to machines, or like in metal, where like there's people who just make these insanely programmed drums, or, you know, very tightly quantized guitar riffs, and then suddenly you have people like Stephen Taranto who could play all that without having to think. And then the other thing it made me think of, understand, when you were saying like understanding what perspective I guess you're coming from, and owning it, and how it changes your relationship with technology. I feel like since I've turned 30 and, you know, continue to work on myself, like really digging deep and being like, okay, what are the things that are keeping me from doing the things I want to do? What is it mentally, physically? And then as I'm parsing through it, it's like, okay, now I have to create new systems to encourage this better state of being, you know, shape my environment differently. And it's changed how I've thought about, you know, with social media, it's like you can get into that panic mode of like, is this content even good enough to put out? Do I even care? Like, this is not going to hit as hard as this person's content. And it's like, at the end of the day, you know, what is, you know, my goal isn't to necessarily just advertise. It's to create something. It's to have a dialogue. It's to, you know, in the interim between shows with bands, give people something they can enjoy, but also, you know, take people on a journey, like set up something where it's not just about like, oh, that was a funny video where that cat fell down, and now I will spend 6 hours also seeing cats fall down. Or like, oh, I went on YouTube and I saw a Rick and Morty quote that someone put like that weird like Alpha Chad bro grind set music behind it, and now it's pivoting towards like alt-right content. Like it's this weird space of like, okay, as a consumer, I have to be mindful, like, in how it relates to me, but then as I'm consuming, I'm also getting inspired to create, but then creating into that medium, it's like you have to overcome that hurdle of like, we're constantly having to self-publish and overcome that like ego thing of like, it's not perfect, it sucks, I'm a fraud.
It's weird how like that fraud feeling comes too, because it's like how could you possibly be a fraud if you're literally doing it? You know what I mean? Like, what is this imaginary standard that the imposter syndrome like gives us that we feel like we're not at, right? Like
Right.
I jokingly so for my personal instrument practice, I've been for the past year heavily focused on just playing jazz on a classical guitar. I just really like the sound of the nylon strings. I'm really just there's a lot of like every day I find like new techniques that I'm kind of like, oh shit, I can actually think about it like this, like
Yeah.
even this far into it, I'm still just like, oh wow, like within the past year, actually what really turned me on is a guy named Barry Harris and his
Oh yeah.
methodology. Yeah, like going just thinking about how he's thinking about moving through the scales, how he's connecting harmonies, how he's what's a passing tone to him, where the scale really lives. All of that stuff, completely revolutionizing a way of thinking. And so what I jokingly say every day I play guitar is like, all right, like I got to learn how to what this instrument is. Like I have no idea what this instrument is, and rather than approaching it like, all right, I know everything about this, and I got to prove that I know everything. It's like a very different mindset. And it's just like okay to like approach every experience for the most part. Now, this is a complicated thing, I guess, because what I'm saying, it's not true. It's just in a mindset. It's like a good mindset to go into things being like, I don't know what this is. I don't know. And then you kind of surprise yourself because the latent subconscious things that you've learned pop up and they help you make good decisions at the right time. And I think about that with social media too. Like there was a period of time where I was way more active on pushing creative content on Instagram. I was like doing it pretty often, a lot of like glitchy videos and things like that. And basically I thought about like what that time was for me, and I stopped doing it for a while. And then maybe like a few months ago, I just started putting little things out here and there. And going into it, there was a moment where I was like, are people gonna like think of, and I overcomplicated the thought. I was like, are people gonna like think I'm still just doing the same thing as, and then I just had to remember, no one remembers. Like I
Nope.
promise you, like when they see it, they're gonna go, oh, Matt's still doing that. Cool, maybe. Or they might just go, that's interesting, or they might not care.
Yeah.
And then you just have to like go into being like, wait, I don't know the landscape today of social media. So I shouldn't let that inhibit me from expressing what I want to express because I might be as a consumer aware enough to make a good decision if I've kind of trusted my decision making in the past and it hasn't like led me to some big faux pas, right?
Right.
I can feel confident that the decision that I'm making, while maybe not completely understood by myself, will be in a good direction on a creative front. I mean, like as like
Right.
putting out content and marketing and stuff like that, because especially with marketing, you can overanalyze a narrative all you want.
Yep.
But as a consumer, I know a narrative versus authenticity, and I
Yep.
always lean towards the authenticity, and I'm very critical of narratives. So why, as a marketer, am I so focused on the very thing that I don't even, as a consumer, really want, just because the stats look better for that thing, right? Where
Right.
in reality, if I just put out that authentic thing, the consumers who I want to reach will most likely get it.
Yes.
That's my belief, and I've seen it happen. So yeah, it's kind of funny how we do that to ourselves. I don't really know. I still do it every day. Like every day I do anything. I open up a computer program and I want to write on, and I'm like, oh, I gotta learn how to code. Like what's going on? I like pick up my guitar. I'm like, I have to. Oh no, what are notes? But then you start doing it, and it all comes back, and you're like, oh yeah, it's like I know what this is. I've been here before.
Yeah, and that's been something I've had to work on too with since I play, in so many different music environments. It's that there's always it's always like the anticipation of the gig gets, I'll overthink something and be like, do I remember that ending? I haven't played that. Okay, I did play this last week, but did I don't know, like maybe. And then literally the whole day of the gig I'm like, this is awesome, and then on stage I'm like, I'm having a great time, and then
Yep.
afterwards I'm like, why did I worry for 2 weeks
Yeah.
about this like 2 hour moment in my life?
Yeah.
And it's
Exactly.
like I have to remind myself it's like that, it's like because I care, but then also because I it's my income, so
Mhm.
I want to make a
Yeah.
good impression every time I'm on stage, regardless of who I'm on stage with, because I
Mhm.
want to keep getting hired to do work.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't, I feel confident that the projects I'm involved in right now, showcase me in
Hmm.
positive lights. But yeah, it's that feeling of like, uh, at least in terms of like thinking about marketing, like, okay, I'm marketing myself every time I'm on stage, making an impression. And, there's always somebody at a gig who it's like, do you play this kind of music? It's like, yeah. Would you
Hmm.
play it on this date in the future? Sure.
Sure. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's sure. That's and that and then, through that you just keep learning and growing. And because yeah, it's like the way we have to you have to teach a machine
Hmm.
how to, navigate through the vocabulary you want to have it navigate through. It's, no musicians immediately jumping on the gig like, all right, here's the most important gig of your life, and you started music today. It's
Yeah.
like you're you're just, you have all these hours of practicing, and then times where, oh, I didn't hit that bend right, or oh, if I changed the way I played this way, or oh, if I
Hmm.
voiced this. So you like, we have to make all those little mistakes. And I think that's where AI could be helpful, is that we input all of the mistakes we've made, and hopefully
Hmm.
there's some sort of like, not objective truth, but like, like, what is the meaning of life with AI? But like, it helps when like things point, towards some kind of
Yeah,
result at least.
exactly. Get some kind of feedback, right? And you can,
Yeah.
yeah, move into a direction. One question I was wondering on you, do you see yourself with any of your projects, whether the groups or anything that you're working on personally, incorporating any elements of like AI? AI, is there any, I mean, I guess you're doing the thing with the bloom thing, which is that, but and I don't know, maybe there's not enough tools out there just yet, but could you see yourself in the future like trying to incorporate something, and what would be like an ideal scenario for you if you could think of one?
Yeah, my thought, because the two main groups, uh that are like original music, um, Earth Radio and Normal
Hmm.
Mode, both are retooling how we do our visuals. And we also both have done planetarium shows where we've had visuals designed for that medium and then
That
adapted
is
to like
cool.
projector formats as well.
Hmm.
Um, so it's like, I want to use, the band has an IZ from Critter Guitari, and I want to, it's like a video synth, and it can
Hmm.
take audio or MIDI input, and then that affects what's happening in the box to the images that
Yep.
can be generated. And it's, it really needs an extra person to kind of control, but you can kind of set it up with MIDI a little bit.
Hmm.
So that's where I'm thinking, like, if there's a way to, keep translating MIDI to, visual stuff, which is doable and programmable, but have a way to, I don't know, if AI could somehow sync it more succinct, or not sync it, but like generate stuff that is using the same
Hmm.
controlling parameters, but not needing me to physically turn knobs, that
Yeah.
would be sweet.
Yeah. Kind of like how you're saying like that looper pedal, how it maybe it can like kind of learn like something about the inputs so it can like intelligently respond to them and then kind of know when things are changing and stuff.
Yeah, because right now it's the goal I have for our show, for those listening, April 28th at Midtown. Uh, we're we're bringing in the dude who worked on our planetarium show this past January to do
Hmm.
visuals, but then we also want to take the IZ and set it up to where he can control stuff, but then it's being replicated, and kind of like the installation you did with the multiple TVs and
Hmm.
it's
Yeah,
like
definitely.
I'm trying to figure out some version of that with the IZ, and
That's awesome.
splitting the signal. And
Hmm.
um because I see AI as, at least for that. I'd be curious if there was more improvisatory generative stuff I could do, like
Hmm.
Bloom, especially since this ambient duo side venture that has a bunch of recorded material, we're starting to think about, actually playing out in that duo more.
Yep.
um and then yeah, the other thing is, like, as I'm trying to retool and figure out systems, it's like once I figure out what modes of, like, oh, this is how I work well, this is how I change to, live more comfortably, or like,
Hmm.
I don't know, set up routines, because I think as an improviser, I have the ability to thrive in chaos, but then if it's always chaos, then I'm like, uh,
Yeah, it's
I can't just
exhausting.
keep improvising. I
Yeah,
just can't.
exactly.
I can't improvise a clean room. I have to do it systematically. Uh,
Exactly.
so if there is a way to, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of those tools, those productivity tools, or even something as simple as like having my AirPods in and then
Mhm.
having like, oh, I'm doing something. Oh yeah, I forgot. On Wednesday, I should bring up this because this is happening. Hey
Mhm.
Siri,
Mhm.
do this. Okay, set a reminder, set a calendar thing, and
Yep.
it's hands free. I don't have to think about it, and I can keep going, and it'll remind me when it does.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, I like. Oh, whoops!
What
Quiet
happened?
Siri. My iPad went off.
I was like, did you say something?
What was that?
Yeah.
Hello.
What do you
I
need me to remind you of?
Do you need me to make a statement? I'm an
Yeah.
AI. Cortana's
Yeah.
dead, so
Yeah. It's just I bet just sitting in the back, like waiting for an opportunity to speak.
I, if I could just,
Actually,
just,
that's
just,
awesome.
but yeah, I like the idea. Yeah, like you've been saying, like AI isn't, as it's being presented to us, it's obviously
Mhm.
very narrow because it's a way to, I don't know if it's just the fact that broad emotional appeal is
Mhm.
a broadly appealing, like that's part of it, but also just finding the easiest way to translate this thing problem, like to a, like AI is going to take away your job. No one wants their job taken away, but that doesn't mean you understand AI because someone said that.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
so it's like I'd like to find that understanding of it as a
Mhm.
tool, because, or it's that same argument, not in the same degree that AI's killed. Well, self-driving car AI, think, killed
Yeah, and
someone,
like a lot of
but
I think there's like military weapons that have really sophisticated AI.
oh, true. Yeah, yeah.
Like they have drones that can like recognize people's faces and be like, yeah, that one, boom.
Yeah. There's sky planes that can just zoom in on what kind of tea the person's having and being like, our intel says that's the target, and then being like,
Exactly.
oops, it was a hospital.
Like, oops.
Whoops,
Yeah.
whoops.
Good thing we didn't
Anyway,
tell anyone we were doing this.
yeah, this is the intelligence agency, so clearly this was the smartest decision.
Yeah.
We're not going to do stupid things in the
Dude, it's
intelligence.
legal because the president did
Yeah.
it.
And we love him.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, understanding it creatively, so that, yeah, like with any, like when I got an
Mhm.
iPod Touch, it was the stepping stone between having one of those flip out, full keyboard, flip phones,
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
going from that to an iPod Touch to then an iPhone. It was like, okay, we had this interim
Yep.
of like the thing I listen to music with and the thing that's a phone is like kind of almost there. And then the phone
Mhm.
happened. And it's like, okay, now,
Yep.
and then now it's part of the cult, or, how some people miss the boat on learning, like the Google suite. Like they don't know how
Yeah.
to use Google Drive or Docs or any of that because they didn't go to school in a time where it was widely used, but now it's
Wait,
part of,
younger generation not familiar with that?
old. I mean, slightly
Or older
old.
generation?
Yeah,
Okay,
like
okay.
slightly.
Okay.
It's mainly the people. It's people that I know at least went to some level of college, but they
Hmm.
didn't go long enough where they needed to do intense research, or I
to
don't
have
know.
that kind of like file sharing experience to make sure papers, information, or whatever were in the right places at the right time.
Yeah, like they were, and it, it's like people just a few years older than me. It depended on the teacher too. Some people had
Mm-hmm.
adopted the tech. Some people were still like, no, we're gonna like maybe an email, but most of this is gonna be turned in this way.
Yeah.
Versus like now, every school is cloud equipped to
Yeah.
understand how to. And I think of us at City or us, not you and me, but us as this
Yeah, I got you.
at City High. We both went to high school. Uh, when I went to City High School, they, we had a computer class or something, but there were also classes where it was like, okay, we made a forum, and it's like the forum is made for this class, and now you have to log in and post and do certain things related to a forum, or
Mm-hmm.
you have to generate a web page, and here's how we're doing it, or you know even little things like my friends bringing in their own Wi-Fi router to bypass the secured school Wi-Fi to be able to watch YouTube. Like
Yeah, yeah.
there's always going to be someone who like is an expert and can rattle off all these very large technical terms, and then there's going to
Mm-hmm.
be the dude who's like out in the boonies who's like retrofitted his AI to like turn his house into a smart home without any,
Yeah.
and you're like, how did you do this? I just, it's this thing. And then I tried that and then it just made sense. You're like,
Yep,
what?
exactly.
So it's like with any new tech, there's going to be
Mhm.
like every version of how people interact with it, from not at all to it, they have
Yeah.
transcended humanity somehow.
Absolutely.
But yeah, this is exactly the chat I was hoping to have, just more understanding on AI and how it relates to society and creative spaces and all of that.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think the last thing I'll say on it, like
Sure.
I think the key understanding that I wish if I could give to anybody is that rather than viewing AI as like this sentient thing. Now, sidebar, we could get into a conversation about is consciousness an emergent property or not? Because if consciousness truly is emergent, then yeah, there's a total theoretical conversation about AI becoming conscious. But that's like a kind of a different conversation. But like the way technically that AI is ultimately working is, like I said, when it comes down to like the text thing, it's basically just a large matrix that understands the probability of what's next based on where it's at now, essentially. And in doing that, that magic trick is amazing. Like yeah, it can make us it can give us real information that way, right? And with music, like so the thing that is chat GPT stands for general pre-trained transformer, and a transformer model is a model that uses a mechanism called self-attention, which basically just creates relationships between all of the words that or elements within the matrix in such a way that resemble what it was trained on. So there's going to be a period of time where we're doing this with MIDI. I'm sure there's probably people already doing this with MIDI. I know there's a project called Magenta that I believe is Google. I'd have to check into it, but basically it's a bunch of MIDI AI, and it's very cool, very fun. But there's also like going to be I mean, I know I'm working on one, which is like a music transformer. I know that there's probably tons of people who have. It's just too obvious of an idea. But when we get to that, it's just going to be about like what is probably going to sound good next. And there will be AIs that generate MIDI where you're like, this MIDI is genius. But in reality, it's like, no, it's not genius. The material it trained on was genius, and it understands the latent probability. So the tool is really about, what if you could get the latent ideas of all of these books you want to read? So I could see in the future libraries having their own local general pre-trained model that is just all the books in that library. So you could ask that library, hey, do you have any like books that kind of have these general ideas in it? And you could give the model the ideas, and it could respond to you with the authors and the books that relate to those ideas that it has, and maybe even give you generated excerpts of those ideas so that you could like interact with them in some way. And that would be like a small scale model versus these like large scales. And so like, that's what I want to see the creative people do, is like, do you want to know the core ideas behind this thing? Well, then you can use this AI to generate the statistics that hold up the generalized space that these things come out of, you know? And so like, that to me is like, all it really is like, I just want to hold all of this information in this tiny thing, and then I want to interact with all of that information. That to me is how I see it, and how I hope people in the creative space especially can get their heads around when interacting with it, because I think we'll see a proliferation of really cool art, and everyone will feel really cool about it, knowing that that's what they're doing, versus being afraid of it, thinking, hey, this person's got an edge because they can pump out, you know, 3D realistic things, or Brahms level romanticism, or whatever at the top of the hat. It's like, you should be excited about that, not afraid of it.
That's that sounds like a good of a pitch as any, to at least look at it and and follow along. And well, it got me thinking of the last two short, small things. I'm thinking of a metaphor for AI training. It's like if you were to walk into someone's kitchen and be like, I want to make jambalaya, but then there's nothing in there to make jambalaya. So there's nothing to reference to make that dish.
Yep.
Like, but so with trying to, you know, to get to jambalaya, you have to teach how, you know, like, here's how you get everything prepared, and then here's how long you cook it, and then here's how you serve it. And it's like, that's what you're doing with AI, but with, you know, literature or art, or you know, systems, or
absolutely.
And then the other thing, another example of recent AI phenomenon is the budding industry of the virtual artist. Or not even, I guess, not even like virtual artists in the sense of like a Miku, or like you know, like, you know, Aesop Rocky's in Fortnite or something. Like, I think of like the you know, like was it Roy Orbison, or Tupac, or Zappa? Like, there's literal whole touring infrastructures around AI replications of past artists, and how they can, like, kind of on rail, you know, at least right now it's on rails. Like, hello, how's it going, Indiana? And it's like, okay, people are clapping, but they're cheering to nothing. So there's an uncanny. But if like the AI was actually able to take in input, and not be like that. Oh, what's that guy's name? Now I just got another. It's that comedian dude from like the 80s who would dress in like an all blue suit and act like a robot, and, you know, like an animatronic from a museum. Would be like, how are you doing today?
Yeah. Is
Miss?
This is it Andy Kaufman? Is it that guy? No,
not Andy Kaufman. It's like Mr. Zorb. Like, his name is some super 80s like goofy sci-fi name, and that was his bit, was just to go places and be like, are you having fun today? Good. Yeah. Like, not giving people the chance, like having that combination of like, it's mimicking human traits and sort of movements, but then not giving the space and time for, like, it's not acknowledging that it's having a response input. It's just like, I'm going to say this, and now I'm going here, and here we go over here. It's like, it just made me think of AI could improve how it could feel more interactive for educational purposes too.
Definitely.
Like,
it'd be cool to have like a little personal tutor who, like, because like we can set these systems up however we want. So people will eventually, as it becomes more commercialized, there'll be ways to finesse it. And like I gave the example of the library, but there'll be these small local models that are very controllable by, the institutions who want to control them. And I could see, like, what if part of going to college was you got like, so you go to Grand Valley State University, and as part of the package of going to Grand Valley State is for the period of time that you're there, you get an AI assistant, and it's trained on the university's knowledge. There's maybe teams that, the whole JSTOR thing, like it's all like inside there, and that whatever curriculum you're on, you maybe get the AI that's a little more focused on that path. And there's ways to ask it questions, but it can be set up in such a way to not just give you the answers, but help you work through the question. And so that you arrive at the answer, but it maybe open doors along the way to let you arrive at that answer. I think that's totally in scope. There's like nothing stopping us from doing that except for people putting the effort in to do it right now. If they're not already doing it, who knows? But
Right.
so the education, I think, is going to be hopefully phenomenal. Like, and this tool can really accelerate that. Now, if you want to talk conspiracy theory, yes, easily manipulatable too. So you have safeguards around it.
I thought of the cynical answer to that is okay, a tenured professor could have a virtual TA and just not go to work.
Exactly.
Like, you're going to listen to Jeeves.
The lessons. Yep. And Jeeves is going to just tell you that I'm right. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
the I in AI is me.
Yes.
Artificial me.
Yes.
But yeah,
exactly.
But yeah, we could go on for hours because it's still evolving. I don't know. Yes. It was great, obviously, chatting with you about all of this.
Always.
Where can people? I know we didn't necessarily talk about your personal projects, but I think I will share the audio that you'll send over so people can listen to it, have a reference to what we're talking about. But also where, I don't know if you want to recommend stuff you're working on or where to learn more about AI or, whatever you want people to know about.
Yeah, I would say for AI stuff, mostly, there's a couple different things about it. Is if you are into reading more like research type papers, this is a great website resource with all like these white papers on it called archive.org, but it's spelled AXIV.org. So that I'll send that link. I mean, that's just an open source educational resource which is really cool. But then the other things I would start to look into is it's for those who want to dive into it, you just kind of got to look up some really good texts. So like one of the classic seminal textbooks is just the textbook called Deep Learning, headed by Ian Goodfellow, who, for people in the space, he was one of the main minds behind the generative adversarial network, which was like the first one that was kind of on the generative scope, being able to create things from scratch. But also just like, for those who are into coding, if you're not already, go to huggingface.com and look. It's a model repository. It's like all these open source models that you can immediately start interacting with. You can bring them. There's often like little example scripts so that if you're writing in Python or you're writing in like whatever language you're using, well, it's not accessible in every language, mostly Python. But like if you're writing in, it gives you examples how to easily implement the model so that you can immediately start to like explore and get on them. But yeah, there is a slight barrier of entry to a lot of the stuff right now, but I think it's completely overcomable, and it's not out of scope if you're interested or if you have an inkling towards it. Some of it will be over your head, some of it won't, but I would just suggest everyone start trying to read the research papers. Everyone start trying to look at code examples on websites that make it really accessible. And even if you're not personally coding, it's just good to see it. And it's cool to, like, for example, on this, to kind of exemplify it, I don't have a traditional computer science background, but yet I'm working at like a leading company, and I'm part of like AI within that company, and I'm one of the people implementing these things within our infrastructure. So how did I get here? This very method, read the white papers, read the code. It's all very accessible. It's very much in your face if you know where to look. So I'll pass along some links as well. But the audio that I'm going to send, it's not projects that I would say that I'm working on as an artist. I would view it as more of a science project at this point.
Yeah.
They're more so novel and interesting. But yeah, I'll share it, and I'll give you little blurbs with it too. But yeah, that's kind of the context around that.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, people can definitely check those things out, and you can follow Matt Finch on Instagram, and see some of these posts he's doing.
Yeah. If you want to see some like glitchy AI music, art, visual stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, I know at least I have a stronger handle at least on AI, and hopefully people listening do too, because it's a fascinating intersection of like culture, tech, how it relates to things. It's like when people probably first got the telephone, they're like, wait a minute, we don't have to be in the same room? This changes everything. I can talk to someone who's not even anywhere near me. It's like, what wonders? So yeah, I'm at least my optimism meter skews more towards optimism now.
Yeah,
which is good.
and that's what I hope. So that's awesome. That's what I want. That's what I like to hear is people shouldn't be afraid of this. I think it's a very exciting times we're coming into.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure I'll see you in, I don't know, future exciting times at some point.
Absolutely.
Now that I don't have to do as many. Well, I have no weddings this year. I'm trying to carve out time to like, can I go somewhere? It's like, it'd be cool.
Come to New York.
I know. I really want to just, check. I've never been, so it's like, let's just go, dive in, see how overwhelming it is, get used to it. Still think it's overwhelming, but have fun.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, dude. No, if you, let me know if you come out. Well, like, if you set up some dates. We can find out there's a lot of great jazz clubs on the Lower East Side you can go check out. There's a lot of cool art galleries, lots of stuff going on. I'd love to show you around.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Well, yeah, enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Yeah, dude, well, thanks again. This was great.
Yeah, thanks. And I'll keep an eye out for those links.
Certainly, dude. All right, have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. See ya. Matthew Finch, everybody. So hopefully you got a little more insight into AI. There's obviously, it's a barrier to entry in terms of understanding it. There's a lot still being developed around it, but I'm at least more optimistic, like I mentioned, that AI is going to be a tool that a lot of people can use for really cool things. It could also be weaponized in ways that aren't good, but ultimately it's something that the more we understand about it, the less we have to worry about, some sort of crazy thing happening, at least within spheres that we can control. But again, thank you for jumping back in on Mitten Backstage. It's good to be back. More interviews coming down the pipeline. Some new revamped things in the works. And if you want to support these podcasts, you can go to patreon.com/Dutcher Snedeker and give a recurring subscribed donation that allows you to get access to other perks as well. You can go to DutcherSnedeker.com to see everything else and find all my socials and where I put out music with other artists. So thanks again, and we'll see you in the next episode of Mitten Backstage. Take care.